My mom is gonna be home any minute, okay?
It'll be all right.
Just when you thought it was safe to be dead.
Ew, would you change the channel, please?
Pledge time. Give me a break.
I know, folks. It's time for you to call with a pledge of $100 or more. You'll become an associate sponsoring patron.
Don't let this happen to you, and it could, you know. The WQEX Winter Pledge Drive is coming, but you can head it off. Renew your pledge with a check to QEX at 4802 5th Avenue, Pittsburgh 15213, or call to become a new member. Our number is 622-1555. Do it now for great shows in 1989.
Pyramids of Mars is truly a very atmospheric and wonderful story that is rooted in some really wonderful Gothic story elements. I think when people always talk about, when Doctor Who used to be very Gothic, Gothic horror, this is what I always come to. This story in particular, it is so wonderful. And I honestly, I don't know of anybody, and I'm sure you're out there, I don't know of anybody who is like, yeah, Pyramids of Mars, it's not really my thing. I don't really care for it all that much. I would suspect that the majority of us fans, at least let's call ourselves the classic fans of the classic series, would really love Pyramids of Mars. And its influence that the Hammer films had on this era of Doctor Who. I mean, it's always had its influence, hasn't it? But it really feels like that these are very much rooted together, and it's always been so much fun to watch. And I'll be honest, when I'm putting these videos together, and sometimes I need to transfer a story digitally maybe 4 or 5 times, honestly, I don't care. I don't care when it's Pyramids of Mars. I can watch that, and over the last couple weeks, I've watched it so many times. I could probably, be an understudy for it, but I don't care. It's so good, and it's so much fun to watch. The villains are truly evil, and the good guys, they're amazing, and I just cannot get enough of this story. It's truly one of the best of the Philip Hinchcliffe. You can really tell right away when Philip Hinchcliffe takes over between Robot and The Ark in Space, even though I know that wasn't the next one produced, but whatever. You could tell his mark on stories that already were put into production before he became producer. But when you start getting into season 13 and 14, you can really see his mark. Now, as some of you will know, sometimes I don't always get the information right, or I might misstep, and it's funny when I go through these videos and I edit them, you might see a little caption on the bottom, just like they did in the Tom Baker years, correcting my inconsistencies, or the fact I completely miss it and you need to tell me about it, or you want to tell me about when you got Pyramids of Mars or why it's interesting to you, go ahead, send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. I love reading the feedback, because I always say this, and I truly mean it. What I'm doing with these videos is sort of a shared story, isn't it? It's always, I'm talking about my experiences. I'm talking about my experiences of getting Pyramids of Mars, why it's important to me. It's going to be very different to the people in the UK, how they got Pyramids of Mars. It's actually very different to a lot of people in the US, how they got Pyramids of Mars. But we're going to talk about it, and it's that wonderful nostalgic shared memory. That's what I'm going after in these videos. And if you hadn't been around during that period of time, I hope that these videos actually make you kind of interested in that a little bit more. And I always say this because I know a few of my friends who got into Doctor Who during the DVD period. I'd be curious to know your thoughts on getting the DVDs, actually. And I think about Pyramids of Mars on the DVD part of it, and I'll explain why in a bit. But I mean, it's one of those great stories that I think, especially in the U.S., U.S. was very happy to get Pyramids of Mars on DVD. Now, also, like I said, I love reading feedback and stuff, and other ways you can do that is going over to YouTube. And over on YouTube at From the Archive 1 is where you can subscribe to my videos, and then you'll know when they come out. And I would greatly appreciate if you do. I love the comments. I try to get back to them as quickly as I can. And really, 99% of the people who have put down comments on the videos have been very kind and also very informative, I guess, with the stuff that they're telling me about how they got these videos and what they were going through during their lives during a specific time, especially when we did the Ice Warriors. That was really cool because it was very clear that was not only special to me, but it was special to a lot of other people. And that was great. And then finally, I do a Patreon. And after the Ice Warriors, I was very blessed, actually, that a few people signed up for my Patreon. And it starts at a low amount every month. And what we try to do is I try to, through my vast archive of printed material and videos and stuff, I'll put some stuff out there. The supporting me supports getting some different equipment, or sometimes maybe getting in something that's of a different format that it will help enhance these videos, such as beta tapes or laser discs. Because these are really these are parts of the story, and more that I do these, the more I want to include all those pieces. So please consider joining my Patreon. I have, just for this summer alone, I have 3 videos that we're hoping to get out. One of them is going to be a big one, and it's going to be a lot of fun to put together. So I hope that you consider helping me with that. So Pyramids of Mars on VHS, like this little guy right here, it was actually the third original story to come out on VHS, as obviously it was very clear from even back in the 80s how important Pyramids of Mars was as a story for people to be able to see. It was the 4th overall release, but Revenge of the Cybermen had a reissue in 1984. And that's where, for Revenge of the Cybermen, we moved from the neon logo over to the diamond logo, which this became the norm throughout the rest of the 80s, the way that this looks right here with a photo montage cover. And Pyramids of Mars was originally broadcast the 25th of October through the 15th of November 1975. And although I am not really up on my repeats on BBC One, When I was doing research for this, what I found was certainly very interesting. I didn't really understand this, that the repeat for Pyramids of Mars ran during season 14 of Doctor Who the following year. So you get to the end of Deadly Assassin Part 4. And the following Saturday, at a slightly earlier time slot, was a 62-minute compilation of Pyramids of Mars, which I knew there was a compilation of it. Then followed the next week by the infamous 60-minute compilation of The Brain of Morbius. So, and that was the 4th of December, 1976. And then Doctor Who was done for the rest of the year and returned January 1st, 1977 with The Face of Evil Part 1. And I think that was always very interesting how, to me, when you get to the end of Deadly Assassin, personally for me, I always kind of thought that was kind of a shift in how the series was. With Leela coming in, I always thought that was a little bit different. So I kind of feel like that's very much permeated with these repeats. That's probably just me coming up with stuff, but I found that very interesting all the same. What we've talked about before was in the early 1970s in the US, in 1972 as it happens, Doctor Who, the TV series. I make that separate from the fact that the Peter Cushing films debuted in the US a little before that. The TV series came to the US and sold as a 72-episode package. And we've shown this graphic before of the sales brochure for it. Have I told you all before that I've actually been able to handle a real one of those and they wouldn't sell it to me? If anyone knows how I can get a hold of one of those original Time Life brochures, please let me know, because I would love to own one. Anyway, that being said, I got that out of my system. The 72-episode package of Doctor Who, starring Jon Pertwee, it continued to run in limited circulation around the U.S., but in 1978, Time Life decided, with the advent of Star Wars, to try and relaunch Doctor Who to the U.S. once again. And instead of relaunching it with the Pertwee package, it instead decided to be a little bit more current with Tom Baker as the Doctor, and that's, makes a lot of sense. So they decided to relaunch with Tom Baker, and as stated in the sales brochure, that there were 98 episodes that were available for syndication, which would take us from Robot Part 1 all the way through The Invasion of Time Part 6. And there's a reason why that's interesting and important, and why that piece of Doctor Who history in the U.S. makes it different than anywhere else in the world. And it is simply this. So when the Pertwee stories were syndicated in the U.S., it was decided to forego explaining what regeneration was. And Spirit from Space was omitted from this package. So the original Pertwee package, as we talked about before, really was Doctor and Silurians, Episode 1, all the way up to The Time Monster, Episode 6. So for these episodes of Doctor Who, from Robot through Invasion of Time, Part 6, they hired an actor by the name of Howard DaSilva. And Howard DaSilva, although is not a name that I personally had known, and I grew up in the mid-70s, 80s, and stuff like that. I mean, you hear about a lot of his contemporaries in that period of time. He wasn't someone I knew about, but if you do some research on Howard DaSilva, you're going to find he was very accomplished, not only as an actor, but as a director, singer. He did theater. And so they brought him in, and what he basically was the American voice for Doctor Who to tell us what was happening during this program, because sometimes perhaps it was maybe a little bit jarring. He wouldn't be on camera, it'd just be a voiceover. And so he would normally be at the beginning of an episode and at the end, sometimes helping things along in the middle. Something else that is important to distinguish here as well is that unlike what eventually became how Doctor Who would run in the US, basically completely on PBS, apart from talking about stuff like Sci-Fi Channel, back in the late 70s, in 78, when this new package of Doctor Who became available for PBS stations, what happened was that they edited for commercials. It wasn't meant to be just PBS stations that picked up Doctor Who. It was meant for anybody to pick it up, and it was meant to be picked up as a strip. So what does that mean? Well, it means when broadcast terms, when you have a TV show and it runs, it's syndicated, and it runs Monday through Friday, that's a strip. It's running every day, almost like a comic strip, how that runs every day, like Family Circus runs every day, Monday through Friday, and then Saturdays and Sundays are kind of best ofs or something like that. So Doctor Who, in this case, was meant to run Monday through Friday, was not meant for movie version, and it was meant for commercials. And then you had Howard DaSilva introducing it, maybe giving some continuity in the middle of the episode to maybe help things along. I don't know. And when I say I don't know why they needed that, but they did. And then at the end, it would be kind of him showing us what was going to be in the next episode. And I've been chronicling the Minnesota broadcasts of Doctor Who, obviously, especially since I started doing these videos. And what we do know of, I talk at length about how KTCA was the one that had broadcast Doctor Who. But before that, in the late 70s, one of the first stations to pick up this new Time Life video package of Doctor Who was a station in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, called KSTP. And that is a commercial station. And they ran it for a few years, and then eventually those rights went over to KTCA. So they were the ones, and a lot of the fans that I know that had been doing this, have been watching this for years and years and years and years, they started watching it on KSTP. And it had moved around the schedule a little bit. But it was these Howard DaSilva episodes that has always been shown. Now, I just want to point out here, because it's the same artwork, but it's not quite the same. I talked about the Pertwee sales brochure, and at first I thought I had the actual sales brochure for the 98 episode package that came to the commercial stations. I have this, and this is in fact 172 sci-fi half hours. This is the entire run of Tom Baker. This is and it, as you can see here, it is listed from Robot. Where are we? There we are. To Logopolis. And one thing I did not know, and I always thought it was actually a theory, but apparently it's real, and it bums me out to hear it, is that obviously this is all Chris Akia's artwork on here that we know very well, and he was not paid for the use of this on either of the brochures, because I believe it's very similar artwork to what is on the 98 episode package brochure. So, because he didn't get paid for it, and of course he should have, and he is one of the best artists ever for the series, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that at that point he wasn't going to do any more, because they pretty much were taking advantage of him by not paying him for this. It's too bad, because his work is so distinctive. We've been lucky with Doctor Who, I think, to have so many fantastic artists working and making covers for us and book covers and paintings and everything else. It's like, but it's a shame that that something like this had to happen. Now, does anyone know what this is? I'm not 100% sure. I'm assuming this is more older, and this has been in my collection for a while, and it's pretty much just talking about Doctor Who in a lot of different ways. And I'm assuming this is actually from like something UK, and I don't know if this is something that if fan clubs asked and this was handed out or anything. I just find it interesting that it is the address on here is Villiers House. If you don't remember about Villiers House, go check out the Ice Warriors video. Don't worry, I thoroughly checked this folder. There are no missing episodes in it. But it's very interesting, and it's one of those things that I'm not quite sure how I got a hold of it. But here it is, all the same. Very interesting. Now, how does Howard DaSilva fit into, in particular, Pyramids of Mars? It's very interesting. It's actually, to me, very interesting. So the first 100 times I'd seen Pyramids of Mars on KTCA was always movie version. And that means, obviously, taking all 4 parts, putting them together, and creating one standalone story, which is fantastic. And then, from there, I've seen it all so many times. I think we've talked about ad nauseum about how I wanted to collect all of Doctor Who episodically. And this is before the tapes started to really come out. And so, talking about getting these episodic, we talked some time ago about WQEX in Pittsburgh, getting episodic copies of that from my friend Mike. But then something kind of amazing happened, because that's going to be a lot of tapes traded back and forth. KTCA, in September of 1990, started running Doctor Who again. They took a bit of a break, and instead of movie version, they went to Sunday afternoons at noon for an hour, and it was episodic Tom Baker. 2 Tom Baker episodes, back to back, and it was extraordinary to be able to get off-air copies of Tom Baker Doctor Who episodic. It was absolutely amazing. And so with that, just every week taping these wonderful Tom Baker stories at SP, all these stories I've seen for years as movie versions. Finally, I'm seeing episodic and seeing the wonderful cliffhangers like Sarah falling off the rocket pad in Genesis of the Daleks, and just the end, the cliffhangers to Robot. All these wonderful stories that they're so great anyway, but watching them episodic, the way that they should be, that much better. We get to Pyramids of Mars, and I have known about the Howard DaSilva stuff, though we didn't really see much of it in the movie versions. Some stuff might have creaked in every once in a while, but for purists like me, Howard DaSilva, on my collection of Doctor Who off-air recordings, is horrific in my mind at that time, because I just wanted these episodes as clean as possible. Don't forget, and I'm sure a lot of you are the same way, if you are getting voiceovers at the end of the credits, like coming up next, SCTV, it blows your mind. It's like, leave my episodes alone. Back in the day, very rarely were we getting even television idents on the corner of the screen. Now, you can't help but having almost a whole other show in the bottom corner of your screen going on. It's ridiculous. So, imagine trying to... I don't even record anything off anymore. It doesn't matter. Back then, though, these, once again, were going to be the archive for the rest of my life of Doctor Who. We get the Pyramids of Mars. Part 1 of Pyramids of Mars is the Howard DaSilva version. Now, I knew what Howard DaSilva was in terms of Doctor Who, but you get to the opening credits, and then you have this. And if we're not done yet, we get to the end of the episode credits, and then you get this. Now, of course, once again, I am really upset about this because this is my recording of Pyramids of Mars. I've been waiting for Pyramids of Mars. It's surprising. Well, I didn't have at the time a movie version of Pyramids of Mars. I bought somebody else's movie version collection in 1997, something like that. So I didn't have anything I could even try to re-edit myself, which is not beyond the bounds of reality with me. So I have this, and I'm like, okay, well, what's part 2 going to look like? Part 2? Just fine. It's all fine until we get to Brain of Morbius, but that's for a different day. Now, as far as this, it's really funny looking back at this now, because in hindsight, I've been able to collect these stories a billion times over, right? Just when you think that you're done collecting it, another version comes along that you want and that you're really excited about. But at the time, it's like, okay, well, whatever. So at the time, I was really annoyed by the Howard DaSilva episode. Now, it is a cherished piece of nostalgia for me and for other people. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But it truly is a very nostalgic moment now, and one that deserves to be appreciated in Doctor Who fandom, I believe.
Look what I found.
Hello, Vicky.
What?
Where did you get that dress?
I just told you. I found it. Back there in the wardrobe. Why? Don't you like it?
Yes, I always did. Victoria wore it. She travelled with me for a time.
Well, as long as Albert didn't wear it. Oh, come on, Doctor. That's worth a smile, surely. What's the matter? You should be glad to be going home.
The Earth isn't my home, Sarah.
When the DVDs first started out, and they first started to release them, obviously the DVDs were first being released in the UK, and then they were being released, those same stories were being released in the US. And there were kind of a strange thing going on here. Warner Brothers were releasing the DVDs over here through BBC Worldwide. BBC Worldwide is an office of people who work on the releases, not really anything to do with Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers was mainly there as a distribution for them. So they were separate. But when DVD started to really become something that we knew was going to hang around, I guess, BBC Worldwide was much, in the US, was much more much quicker, I think, off the mark to exploit this new medium. Now, leaving Doctor Who off it for a second, there were a number of DVD releases that happened that it took the UK years to release. And that would be, obviously, Are You Being Served is one of the big ones. And what makes Are You Being Served in particular very important is that, first of all, it's, they released the entirety of it pretty much right away. And right away meaning right away when DVD was looking to be something. And and unlike what's still in the UK to this day for DVD releases, they were uncut. And I think that they were using better masters than what they're even using for broadcast. I believe they brought in new masters for the release. They looked great. There's still that DVD set, a couple things. That DVD set, which I don't know why I need to look at it over there, which is over there right now, like I'm connecting with it or something. The DVD set is one of the only areas in the world you can get Are You Being Served that is completely edit-free. Another thing that was released was what we call over here Good Neighbors. They call The Good Life. And they were a completely new set of masters that were brought over and released with some extras and stuff. In the UK, they weren't even out yet. So it's stuff like that. Keeping Up Appearances, I think, was close to being. They might have been around the same time, but they were completely very separate. So where Doctor Who fits in that is, apart from one release, all the other releases followed along what the BBC were doing, and I think a big part of that was because the fact that they're being remastered, I really think had a big hit with that, in terms of that I think the BBC over here in the US needed to be very careful not to release something that that they would have to release over here because there's a better version of it now, if that makes sense. The only time they strayed away from that was the Key to Time set, which is a very interesting set on its own, and someday we will get to it. So the thing about some of these early releases is that the gentleman by the name of T.J. Lubinsky, who is kind of the champion for Doctor Who in the US in terms of how it was broadcast. He's a huge champion of the Howard DaSilva episodes. Like, he has spent years and years and years trying to get restoring these Howard DaSilvas to their how they sound. I'll explain why in a minute, why he needs to do that. But he's trying to restore them as they were, taking broadcast masters of episodes, like the complete episodes, using the same Grass Valley switcher to do the same kind of wipes that were done for these, and tracking down as much material as possible to recreate these Howard DaSilva opens and closes. And so he had approached BBC Worldwide, and he was able to get, for the Tom Baker releases, for a few of them, he was able to get them to put onto the DVDs those opens and closes for the DVD release for people to enjoy. It's really important that should be applauded. First of all, it was only in the US that those were available. They wouldn't put them on the UK releases. Somebody over in the UK had heard what was happening and had basically put a stop to it and decided that they should all be uniform, they should all be the same. All the discs across everything going forward. Now, that's not a horrible decision. That's, there's a lot of reasons why that's a good decision. The problem with that, though, is that, well, then still, add them to the DVDs. Why wouldn't you? I don't know how many times I heard from Australia or New Zealand, whatever it is, Doctor Who and the Green Man. These are extraordinarily unique in the history of Doctor Who. There's no reason why they shouldn't have been included. If people don't want to watch them, they simply don't hit that button on the menu. I do not watch Behind the Sofa. It's just not my thing. Doesn't mean that I should wish that no one else has the opportunity to watch it. If that's what people enjoy, then they should be able to do it. I much rather watch Howard DaSilva intros and outros than a documentary on blood pudding. That's just my opinion. But they took up so little space. Why could they not have been added? As far as, I don't know how rights would go. I would assume they would need to clear it with the Howard DaSilva estate, which I know TJ knows and gets along with very well. TJ, to my knowledge, wasn't offering money for his work to put the packages together. Just like pretty much everyone else on the Doctor Who DVD ranges, and probably to the extent the Blu-ray range, they're working for very little to no money, because it's the love for the series. I love it. But to have someone be like, nope, it's, Doctor Who DVDs are for the British television viewing experience, I think that's flawed. And I still do not understand why this set of Blu-rays do not have them on there. Especially when it's meant to be the final physical release of Doctor Who. I've been saying that for every video as I've done. Like, this was supposed to be it. I do believe it for the most part with the season collections. That being said, though, why not include them? It seems to make perfect sense. In fact, if I know that a lot of people probably haven't given it any thought whatsoever, but maybe send BBC Studios or BBC Support just a nice little note saying, you know what, would you ever consider putting these on here? One thing that I didn't expect to ever see on the collections were VT clocks, and for the most part, if they have them, they're there. And I appreciate that. I would love to see people have Howard DaSilva's intros and outros included as well. And I know it's important to TJ. TJ has been working on this for a number of years. So, it's a shame. It's a shame that it was stopped. It's great that they're on some of the releases. It'd be great if they were on the collection releases as well. And if you're wondering, well, Greg, what releases are they on? Take a look at this. One of the things I remember in particular about Pyramids of Mars running on KTCA is that a good friend of mine, I've kind of lost track of him over the years, as people do. He now works for Microsoft, and last time I saw him, he flew in from Seattle, and I don't mean like on a plane like that everyone else like myself would be on. He piloted the plane from Seattle. He's kind of a genius, so it kind of makes sense he's not hanging out with me anymore. But so he could do anything. He's very, obviously very brilliant-minded and stuff. And he had I think an uncle that worked at KTCA and worked in Master Control. And so he had over time, and it was really a shame, I think, in a sense that that Doctor Who was only running movie version for the most part, because he would be able on occasion to bring his VCR in, or actually probably use the VTR, makes more sense. Actually record for the master tape. Like I have his Delta and the Bannerman that way. He recorded Pyramids of Mars from the dub that Lionheart supplied to the station, part 1 of Pyramids of Mars. But what makes this interesting is that he recorded it onto 1-inch tape himself, because there was some extra 1-inch tapes hanging around at stations. Sometimes they have spools of tapes and stuff. And he's just one of those people, I just wanted to see what it's like to record it onto 1-inch tape. So he played the master, which, spooling 1-inch tape isn't that hard if you have the right kind of machine that does it itself. He set it up and he recorded it himself. And I think that's really cool. I wish I had that. Oh wait, I do. It's right here actually. So yeah, this is here is Pyramids of Mars, Part 1, as a 1-inch tape, as you can see. Now, let's not get carried away here. This is not a broadcast master. This is a dub from a broadcast master. I don't think that you can call it the same thing. But I find it very interesting. I find it very cool that that I have that. It's one of my collection of broadcast masters. Now, I'm no TJ Lubinsky, who I think he has pretty much 1 and 2-inch videotapes of basically every Doctor Who episode that aired in the U.S. But, I'm doing all right for myself. Now, like I said, I always transfer these episodes from VHS or Beta, Laserdisc, whatever, to digital, so I can include it in these episodes. And what I ended up with, I found this little gem after the broadcast of the movie version of Pyramids of Mars on KTCA. I miss these days. Take a look at this.
is this man? Why does he want to be the new Doctor Who? Meet the new Doctor and hear the answers to these and other questions at the Doctor Who celebration, Sunday, July 12th at the College of St. Catherine. For tickets, call 647-4515.
So they were bringing in, this is in 1987, they were bringing in Sylvester McCoy as part of the Doctor Who tour. Maybe it's not so obvious as Sylvester McCoy since they covered his face. Even though they're just covering his eyes, it's kind of weird, isn't it? Especially since none of his episodes had aired. Matter of fact, it was going to be years before his whole, couple years before his whole tenure would air. But they brought him, and I want to say to St. Catherine's, and they brought the whole tour bus, and McCoy was there and everything. And it was a pretty big deal. I remember that I was not able to go. And I remember it being in the summer very vividly. And it was, one of those halcyon times of being a Doctor Who fan back in the day when stuff would just happen. I think it was the weekend before that the Doctor Who Fan Club of America, DWFCA, actually brought in Louise Jameson, and she was at a place in St. Paul called Paul's Place, and it was not there. It's not there anymore, but it was the very first time I actually saw a Doctor Who celebrity, and so I think the reason why we did not see Sylvester McCoy the following week was two reasons. I suspect one reason was that that's money that I was, not making, that I'd have to kind of mooch off my parents for. But the other, I remember going up north, I think to Brainerd, Minnesota, with a buddy and his family, going up to their cabin and doing all sorts of stuff. And it looks, from the pictures of it all and everything, it looks very cool. I don't think I missed too much. I got to see McCoy a number of times. And something else that I was reminded about that I had completely forgotten about when it comes to the movie versions of Tom Baker in particular, because and I just was reminded when I did this digital copy, was the fact that the way that the opening credits would get into the story itself, sometimes it would be kind of faded down. Sometimes it would just be abruptly cut. Sometimes, all sorts of things, when it's a movie version. This is a period of time that the Doctor Who credits, it would be the diamond logo, then followed by the title of the story, the writer, and then going back to the diamond logo. It actually makes a lot of sense in a way, because you don't have to actually really edit anything out. You're only overlaying part of some video back over the actual story itself. It confused me, though, as many things did, simply because I took, and I've said this before, I took everything I saw on PBS, on KTCA, as that's how it aired in the UK on the BBC. So it's like, boy, you'd think that they go through all of this work to make these shows look really nice, like the sets look really great for Sutekh and everything else. Like, why can't they get the opening credits a little bit smoother? Well, I realize it's just somebody somewhere else taking these finished episodes and cobbling them all together. I had no idea. Okay, relax. What is interesting, though, is that over time that was changed. We talked about it, really starting with Trial of a Time Lord, going to the end of the McCoy run, that it was all, they were all redone specifically for movie version to make it much cleaner. And that made a lot of sense, actually, even though if they got the fonts wrong and stuff. And so, it took them a while. Well, really, relatively speaking, it only took like 4 years. But they were able to figure it out. Makes it all a little bit smoother. Now, because I got all of these WQEX tapes, and if you don't know what I'm talking about or you want the full story, check out my video for an unearthly child. These WQEX tapes, they are truly gold mines to me, and I hope that those of you watching are happy with them, because I think these are just fantastic. And so, first of all, there are for Pyramids of Mars, because I went through the tapes and I digitized them. I went through the tapes. There are 5 intros for 4 episodes. I do not know what's going on here. I am really confused by it. Parts 2 and 3 are introduced incorrectly. Okay, so I think part 2 is basically saying it. The VJ is saying it's part 3. Part 3, they're saying it's the final episode. So that's confusing. So let's first of all take a look at these openings that are confusing to me.
Good to be with you again. But of course, this is Pip Theodore, your VJ on Monday nights, Foreign Encounters, and first and foremost, holding out me old mitt and saying thank you for your letters. Now, this time, all of them were nice. They're very nice. Don't think I deserve it, but who busts against their good luck? Oh, not me, by Jove, not me. Now, keep them rolling in, even when they don't like me. And now to Doctor Who. Pyramids of Mars. This one's a real stunner. Episode 1. The Doctor faces the biggest peril the world has ever seen when the evil Professor Scarman, aided by his devilish robot mummies, builds a rocket that could destroy the Eye of Horus. And that, my Whovian friends, will release, so help me, nothing less than the Egyptian god of darkness. Nothing but nothing could be more horrific. So get glued, me darlings, because here comes Doctor Who, Pyramids of Mars, the first episode.
Jews. Well, anyway, we're quite unusual. WQEX in Pittsburgh.
Hello, Whovians. Joe Negri here, gearing up to take you into the Pyramids of Mars. It seems that Professor Marcus Scarman has built a rocket that could destroy the Eye of Horus on Mars. He's being helped out by a bunch of robot mummies. Why is it that nearly every robot in Doctor Who, except K9, of course, is in cahoots with the bad guys? You think that in their advanced culture, they could build a robot with a sense of morality. But anyway, if the eye is damaged, it could release the Egyptian god of darkness, thus ruining everybody's tan for the summer. Actually, the results are much worse than that. Stay tuned to find out more. And stay tuned with me later this evening for In Performance Night as we dance to the tune of a different drummer. We begin with Mikhail Baryshnikov in a program choreographed by Twyla Tharp, and cap off the evening with the Dance Theater of Harlem performing Streetcar Named Desire. One last Who footnote. Don't forget that on August 3rd, and that's less than a week away, Tom Baker and crew move to 11:30, and Peter Davidson will settle into the 7:30 slot. It's double the doctors right here on QEX. Enough chatter already. Here is Chapter 3 in the Pyramids of Mars.
Last Thursday night that you'll ever see me hosting Doctor Who. I tried my best to be informative, entertaining, and a little irreverent, but your cards and letters speak out pretty clearly. You'd rather not see me on Thursday nights. So, I'd like to thank everyone who's given me so much support since I started. My mom and dad, who sold my brother to slavery to send me to broadcast school. My close personal friend, Steve Martin, who went out of his way after a performance here in town to tell me something about comedy that will live with me forever. I'll never forget it. His words are still ringing in my ears. He came up to me and said, "Tom, always try." Now, it was really important anyway. And of course, to all of you who have made my job so much fun. So, here's my last Doctor Who. Of course, I'll still be watching it at home, but it just won't be the same as being here. Oh well. Here it goes. Tonight's final episode of The Pyramids of Mars pits the Doctor one-on-one against Sutekh. First off, the Doctor has to learn to stop being such a smart aleck and shooting off his mouth, because every time he says something nasty, Sutekh gets this look in his eyes that puts the Doctor into some serious pain. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Also tonight, Sarah gets together with her mummy, but it certainly isn't a family affair. And if you're into riddles, you'll hear one tonight that actually originated in Egypt. So, that's about it. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for the memories.
Tom, wait.
The telegram. Dear Mr. Downing. Oh, my. It's a reprieve from the station manager. I don't believe it. It says here, instead of taking me off altogether, they're just going to move me back one night to Wednesdays. What do you know? He must really like me. Hey, maybe now I'll ask for a pay raise and, well, maybe a few more vacation days, and then
Push your luck, Downing.
Oh. Okay. Here's Doctor Who, and I'll see you Wednesdays, beginning next week.
Channel 16 in Pittsburgh.
Hi, PJ Maloney here. Welcome to QEX 16. We have a primetime big event coming along about 90 minutes from now. We'll talk more about that in a second. But you are here to watch Doctor Who. It's Tom Baker versus Sutekh, the ancient Egyptian god of destruction. Probably the most formidable confrontation between Doctor Who in any incarnation and a force of evil. It's Chapter 3 coming along in a second. Prime time tonight starts at 8 o'clock, right after we go through British comedy during the 7 o'clock hour. Checkpoint Berlin is on at 8 o'clock. It's the story of Berlin post-war, the history of Berlin, East and West Berlin, and a look at the lifestyles of the people who live there now. And then at 9 o'clock, John Chancellor from NBC is going to be here with a program called 25 Years of the Presidency, examining the presidencies of Eisenhower all the way up through Carter, based on interviews with the chiefs of staff in each of those administrations. So be here tonight starting at 8 o'clock for the primetime big event. Join me then. In the meantime, here's Doctor Who.
WQEX, Channel 16 in Pittsburgh.
Me darlings, here I am again, your old mate, Pip Theodore, and we're talking quickly on what we've just seen, Rocco and his brothers. That was part one, and there's one more to come. What an Italian classic. Strike a light. But only the Italians can come into a family-loving scene at high speed and walk out at the same high speed an hour later. 1 hour. Pyramid of Mars, Episode 4, and it's Dr. Tom Baker Who, the old favourite doctor, who's into this all out to stop the destruction of the Eye of Horus on Mars, which, heaven help us, may release unknown forces of darkness. Stand by for the Doctor and a big huzzah to him as he wades in to save old Mother Earth.
Now, as far as the tape goes itself, I'm not sure if the person who originally taped them might have dubbed something over, and that's why we have like 5 unique intros to 4 episodes. I do not know what's going on here. That's part of the fun of all of it. But do you remember that intro that we had at the beginning, that Friday the 13th PBS intro, which, you know, my station would never do anything like that. It was pretty much very, not hoity-toity by any means, but a very Minnesota sort of thing. And if you need to understand what I mean by Minnesota, you know, terms like hot dish are things that are very Minnesota. Garrison Keillor, that's the sort of vibe that the PBS station would have. Prairie Home Companion, very much really celebrating Minnesota's sort of sort of token farm sort of feel to it and whatnot. And if you don't know who Garrison Keillor is, first of all, congratulate yourself. But secondly, if you want to know, take a look and you'll see kind of his homespun way of doing stuff that I have never been a fan of whatsoever. But anyway, WQEX, though, they're doing all this fun stuff. So fun, in fact, that they are doing pledge drives in a jacuzzi, okay? But they do something really interesting that I think was really fun. And I'm not saying for a second that they weren't planning this all along. You know, the jacuzzi was during a pledge drive that was in the winter. They would say very simply, if we get so many calls in the next 15 minutes, we're going to play a special video. And they would keep saying that, and they would play the special video. Whether they got the calls or not, I cannot say. Because normally they have the calls on the, behind them. We've shown you pledge drives from KTCA before. This is WQEX in Pittsburgh, so it's a little bit different. But so they're in there, and they talk about a couple of unique interviews. And one of them is Tom Baker. And so this is really interesting. This is what they said is a WQEX exclusive interview with Tom Baker. I've never seen it before. We've seen a lot of stuff. Now, don't get excited. It's not like anything you've never seen before. But it's a unique period of time that they got Tom Baker, and they did a very quick interview with him. And I just think that you need to see it. So here's probably the first time seen in decades a unique, unseen interview of Tom Baker.
Of course, lots of science, fantasy and science fiction things on television. But there's never anything quite like Doctor Who. And so, in that sense, it's not actually competing with anything. It just is this curiosity about a man. He appears to be a man, this alien from outer space, from Casterbalus, I think he comes from, or Gallifrey. And here he is in human form, very powerful, and apparently very intellectual. And yet, with all his power and intellect and capacity to travel and dematerialize through space, all those wonderful beguiling notions, there's a man who is not interested actually in power or money or sex or gratuitous violence, and who appears to have, well, yes, indeed, what's left. He's not interested in any of the big impulses that drive most of us, or especially which drive the kind of psychopathic so-called heroes of modern television. I mean, most characters in television, in popular television, are monsters, aren't they? And for some reason or other, we tolerate them or we laugh at them, but we don't really approve of them. They're really rather dreary, mostly witless, certainly mostly violent, don't have complicated thoughts about women or property or success. They're really rather drab, I think, and unambiguous. Now, the character of Doctor Who slides sideways into every situation and has an alien viewpoint when faced with any dilemma. And this makes it rather a different show. And I think it's for that reason that it's been somewhat successful. I think that finally, people are interested in people. Most people are not interested in abstractions. Most people are not interested in ideas, not really. They're interested in other people. We're very fragile. I think that we're interested in myths and magic, as it's embodied in what people think and how they behave to each other. And so finally, you will always be driven back to characters. When you say, if you ask a child, you say to a child, I met a famous footballer or a famous movie actress or something like that, the childlike response, which often should be echoed in what purports to be criticism, is, well, what's she like? What's he like? And you say, well, how do you mean, what's he like or what's she like? I say, well, is she nice? Is she kind? Is she amusing? What does she think? What sort of flowers does she like? So I say, I tell you something, she's got marvelous manners. And so I say, has she really? She's got marvelous manners. And so a picture emerges, and I think that's what reinforces people's interest. I think the marvelous potency of television is that, of course, it takes place, doesn't it, almost invariably in a domestic context, without any formality at all. Unlike the formality of going to the movies where it happens in the dark, in the noise of popcorn, or going to the theatre where you have to buy a ticket and sit down and everyone says, shh, and off you go. Television is amazingly slyer and more subtle and powerful because it takes place when your guard is down.
Now, there's more that is going to be coming up here that we're going to be taking a look at over time from this stuff, which is really incredible. Now, I'm sure I can already imagine now that I said that no one's seen this Tom Baker video, we're going to get tons of people being like, wow, it's, it's on blah, blah, blah. Maybe, but to me it's new. And once again, it's not earth-shattering. It's not like, Tom Baker spills a bean on something that none of us had ever heard before. But it's always good to see something that's from a time that's long gone now. And that's kind of cool to see. Now, we're at the point of the video where it's like, what toys are a 50-year-old man playing with today? And I just want to say that, once again, if these things existed when I was younger, oh my God, how incredible. First of all, I have consoles for everything. And this is specifically the one that was introduced around Pyramids of Mars. And this is, when season 13 came on. So I needed to show this. This is really cool. Time Rotor's a little stuck there for me. More likely something that I did, because I can't touch anything without breaking it, so I'm very careful with it. It is really, really cool. And I really appreciate Richard's work on it, as always. Someone had gifted me a number of years ago the 2 Pyramids of Mars sets that came out. We have this one that has Sutekh, and it has the 2 mummy guards on it. How incredibly cool is this? Once again, if this was around when I was a kid, and then I have the other one that has like the pyramid and has a Scarman and has the other version of Sutekh, which I love. Now, why have I not opened these up? It's not because I don't like them, because I love them. I am so touched that they were given to me that I just do not, for some reason, want to open them up yet. I love them as they are. And then when I open stuff up, I lose stuff. So I'm not gonna get into that. I don't want to keep losing stuff. I think it's so cool, though. So something I've been asked in past videos had been very simply, how was I watching these things in the U.S. if I had PAL tapes? How is it that I was able to, how did it work electricity-wise? What kind of equipment did I use? How did that go? And I really wanted to wait till I did the Pyramids of Mars video on it, because it truly is, it makes a difference. Talking about Pyramids of Mars, because there's something very important about it. And when I got into deeper into the tape trading, when I met people like we talked about Robert and talked about some other people that we've done stuff with, there were people trading stuff that I had no idea that people traded certain ways. U.S. fans trading tapes in PAL, not NTSC conversions, but in PAL. And that was just kind of like a game changer for me. That was like an elevation. And it wasn't like, well, we're going to convert them and watch them. We're actually going to watch them on PAL TV sets. Now, we talk about stuff like camera copies. And we don't like camera copies. We already talked about that. People were also using like a VCR that was like one piece and it did everything. And so one of the things that people use, and I never really used this myself, was the Panasonic Worldwide VCR player and recorder AG-W1. And that was something that I always thought looked really cool. I always wanted to get it, but the problem was with it is that it was the conversion. A couple things wrong with it. First of all, I had no money. That was what's wrong with it. I was when I was in a position of when this was coming out. Let's see, that would have been like I would have been like 19 years old. I mean, and I think it went for about $400 to $600, which I think there's people who bought PAL equipment earlier before that paid a heck of a lot more than that. But also, the conversions were pretty rudimentary. In fact, the way I remember it would be that it would look like there was a screen over it. So there was kind of like a line patterning on some of the movement and stuff, and it was fine for what was needed. It really kind of accentuated the line pattern, and not in a way that was good. And it was very it was something. If someone said, "Greg, we have this for you," would I take it? Of course I would take it. To the point that I remember that there was a shop that catered towards I don't remember what ethnicity that PAL or maybe some other ranges, because this Panasonic AGW1 didn't just do PAL. It did all sorts of different formats. Like, it was really a worldwide VCR is what they called it. So there was this, by where I went to school, there was this shop that catered to an ethnicity, a culture that had a different television broadcast system than what we had. I remember going in there one day because I was just curious what they had, and they had one of these VCRs. And so I left that day, and I was like, how do I get this? I need to get it. I'm making like $100 a month, at that point, living with my parents. Obviously, it's not like, oh, I could save up and in a month I can have it. It's more like, yeah, keep trying. And I remember so badly wanting it, actually, that I went into the shop and I just said to them, hey, can we do this on like a layaway, or can I just do payments, like $20 a month or something for it? And the look they gave me, as you can imagine, I did not leave with the VCR that day. It's just like, unfortunately, that is how I operate. When it's something I really want, it's like, how do I get to do it? How am I able to do this? More so than goals, it was for Doctor Who, to get better quality Doctor Who. I mean, let's just be honest here. So I had to wait for some time later to get what I was looking for. And a couple things transpired. Once again, my friend Robert, we had met around 96 actually. And he introduced me to Super VHS. And Super VHS was the next level of duplicating. I mean, that's what it's all about, and getting better copies, and getting copies in Super VHS, and people are like, can I get a copy? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, it's in Super VHS. Or more so, can I borrow your tape? I'm sorry, it's in Super VHS. Do you have a Super VHS player? No? Alrighty then, so sorry. So, you know what I'm like. I know what I'm like. So with that being said, we ended up ended up with a tax return. By that point, I was making a lot more money. A number of years have passed. I ended up getting 2 Super VHS players and a color corrector between the two, so I can, mess with colors a little bit or whatever else, a SEMA. And then a little while later, we talked about knowing that there's people who were trading in PAL, and I really wanted PAL. So what ended up happening was I went in with a friend in Minnesota here, and we did the research. I think he did the research. And I don't know if anyone's ever heard of a 10 lab converter. And it was really a very nice converter. It was about $600. He bought the converter, I believe, and then I bought a PAL VCR. And the idea was that we would, trade it off or whatever else. Well, he just wasn't a tape trader. I think he did it because he knew it would make me happy. I don't know. It was very kind all the same. So I ended up having it pretty much the entire time, but I made him copies if he ever wanted them, or let him know what I was getting. And that was pretty amazing, because it was around that time that Black Star became a thing. We talked about Black Star before. That's where Ice Warriors, stuff like that, where I can on with my PAL VCR, I can run it through my SEMA color corrector, because if I recall, the 10 Labs converter really washed out the color. It was a great It was a great converter. It didn't have that line structure. It was very natural looking. It looked very good. It was very top of the line for that kind of price point. But it really washed out the color. So whether or not I'm juicing up the color or not, just turning on the SEMA suddenly made things a little bit richer. And then could play with the colors, rudimentary a little bit. And so did that. And then after that, I would convert it from PAL to NTSC, often Super VHS. Not only for some friends, but for myself as well. But the thing was, what came down to was the fact that that getting Black Star, I was open to this world of PAL VHSs of stuff that was never released in the U.S., such as Doomwatch and Quatermass, some of the Yes Minister stuff that never was released over here. And then, of course, one of the first things I got was the episodic Pyramids of Mars. Now, why is this important? Because it was never released in the U.S. on VHS in episodic format. It was only released in the U.S. as movie version, okay? So, this was fantastic. And I don't remember if Robert had a copy of Pyramids of Mars or not, but I made a conversion of Pyramids of Mars, and I sent it to him on Super VHS. I don't even think he got through the episode of part 1. And he called me up to tell me how amazing it looked, and I must have the greatest system of all time. The colors were so good. Everything, it looked like a broadcast tape. Now, of course, we know that that's impossible off of VHS, but, back in the day. And he was really excited about it. And then he saw part 2, and he's like, well, maybe that's just a better tape because part 2 doesn't look quite as good. The truth of the matter is like, there wasn't any conformity really at that point for a lot of releases when the updated Pyramids of Mars was released. So it was, it wasn't quite the same. But nevertheless, it was really cool. And it wasn't until it wasn't until a number of years later that I ended up living my own, had even a better job, and finally got myself a PAL TV. Or really a multi-system television, because it could play anything. But watching these VHSs in PAL was quite the revelation. But then watching them on DVD, and I remember watching, like, the DVD to Spirit from Space. I remember watching, like, the opening to Carnival of Monsters, which was the first of the Pertwee stories to use a remastered title sequence. These are incredible. This was amazing. So I was really excited that we were able to see that. Stuff looks so good now, but it doesn't really quite hit that moment of absolute supremacy of watching these the first time and watching them component opposed to composite inputs and just those colors popping. Just so amazing. I'm going to walk you through how all this happened because, to be honest, this is something that I think you also need to see because, in a way, it's lost technology, or certainly older technology. So I'm going to walk through how we made these conversions back in the day. All right, I am downstairs from where I normally shoot my videos, and I set up this kind of elaborate throwback to the 80s. And I do apologize if my screen here is flickering. I will. I'm in post. I might dull that because it might be very annoying. They both might be very annoying. I can't really see because I'm actually doing this for my phone. But here we have. I wanted to show people how back in the day, myself and other friends would get these VHS tapes, what we would do with them, whether it be an NTSC or a PAL recording, okay? So this is what we're going to look at here. This is obviously a PAL television. It's outputting PAL right now. In fact, I haven't turned this on. The last time I turned this TV on was when I did the opening to my Terror of the Autons BBC video, because I needed a television that could play back a DVD, basically in standard def. So that was the last time I turned this on. When I turned this on earlier, I could see with my own eyes the flickering that you are seeing right now. Mainly because it's PAL, and I'm not used to PAL. So it's flickering, which is kind of fun. It's like, wow, back in the old days. Over here to our right is an NTSC. It's not apples to apples today, is it? Because I'm lucky I have any of this equipment still. What we have here is a PAL VCR that is also a DVD recorder as well. I picked this up about a year ago. Oddly enough, when I had decided to do this video, my PAL VCR, the one I just talked about, the one I said that I had got back in like 98, 99, something like that, the Sony one, it died on me just as I was transferring the Pyramids of Mars. So that's how, and I'm not turning this off, by the way, because I don't know if it'll turn back on, and I'm not kidding. So it took me a while to get the settings right. So I ended up getting, I think I still have one other PAL VCR somewhere, but this is kind of it at the moment, which is fine. Over here is an NTSC VCR, which this isn't actually mine, this is my ex-wife's actually. My Panasonic Super VHS machines died years ago. I wore those out completely. So that is really why I don't have a lot of VCRs. I only have a couple to do my transfers with. Up here is my 10 lab converter I talked about. I believe it was one of the best out there by the time that I went looking for them. Pretty inexpensive. I think it was like $650. This is the color corrector that I talked about. And I want to quickly show you, see how well this looks. I want to show you, it's like you can when you power it on, immediately whatever you have these settings at will hit into play, and you'll be able to see immediately the difference. You have tint, color, sharpness, brightness, contrast, blue, green, red, and then bypass. So you can kind of go between the two as well. I think it was like $100, maybe $150 back in the day, but I loved it, and I used it on all my conversions. And so what I ended up doing was taking, if I had to make a conversion, I would, and here's the thing, folks. What I was planning on doing for this video was showing you what the PAL tape looked like on the PAL screen, and what would it look like when I converted it to NTSC. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Not only could I not find the plugins for these, the cords, I went out and got new ones, and I put what I thought was correct. I put one in this one, and immediately started to smell smoke. So I don't think I did it right, and probably ruined it, which at the end of the day is not the end of the world. But once again, I mean, if you look at this, it is just, you have your PAL, CCAM, NTSC, what is this? So NT443, and then you can kind of mess around on here a little bit. If you're PAL out, NTS out, I was always PAL out, obviously. And this was the Super VHS version. So I could connect everything via Super VHS. So what I would do is connect from this down to this. So I'd go from here to here, And then so I could mess around with whatever color. I found that that when converting from using this converter, it did take out the color quite a bit. So I always found personally, I just needed a little bit color added. I didn't need a lot of color added. I needed just enough to give it a little bit of life. And that's what this did. Friends of mine in my opinion, would oversaturate the blue, like they'd have the blue really far up or the reds. And, for me, once it went over the, over the lines of the actual thing you're looking at, and it started to kind of glow beyond the lines of the, what you're trying to convert, of like the person or whatever else, it always felt like then, yeah, that might be a little bit too far. So then once I got my color right, it would come through here. I'd be watching the output from here, and I would make my recording, my NTSC recording from my PAL to NTSC via this and this. And that was really kind of fun. That was a lot of fun to do, and I absolutely loved it. What I want to do is just show a little bit of a comparison here. Since after all, this is the planet or the pyramids of Mars video. It's been so long, I don't even know anymore. So I wanted to kind of do this. Now, what I don't have the NTSC version of this, which is, I just never had. So what I'm going to do here is in the PAL, we have the episodic version of Pyramids of Mars. And here in the NTSC, we have the NTSC off-air KTCA from 1987. Listen, let's just get one thing straight. These will not line up. I'm sure there's better people out there that can figure out how to line it up, but these won't line up. They will be off. I'll do my best, have them queued, but you know how this works, especially when I'm involved. We'll find it doesn't work at all. But I wanted to share this, and you could kind of take a look between your NTSC and your PAL here. Let's see if we can get this somewhat close, all right? So this time we are grabbing from the NTSC Sontaran Experiment Genesis of the Daleks, as well as the PAL one as well. So you can see kind of the difference there. Take a look. There's one other thing I wanted to talk about here. I'm going to shut everything off here real fast. You may be wondering what it is that's holding on top of the two TVs. They're both Betamax machines. They're the same Betamax machine, and I had bought some off-air recordings, PBS Doctor Who recordings on Betamax, and I already had these machines, so I thought that it'd be fun to try them out. Both machines have eaten tapes, unfortunately. But what I can see so far from the tapes that I did get, very simply, that the person who recorded these is one of those type of people that doesn't hit record until they see the title sequence start. So so far from what I've seen, they really haven't been of any use for me whatsoever. One of the things I wanted to do also, because in the past people have asked me, well, what do you do about the power source when it comes to having bringing in a piece of equipment from the UK. And very simply, what we had done is we had just simply have an adapter, and so you could put whatever else you want in there, whatever you need, but this is our adapter. And so I can just plug it in, and that's what it is. I have so many of those adapters because everything I have pretty much is from the UK, or it's a European sort of thing. Okay, there's one other thing I want to show everybody here real fast. Now, some of you might be wondering a little bit of how do I take the either NTSC or PAL analog tapes and convert them to files, okay? And the reason why I want to show this, because you might think, oh, well, maybe he writes in the DVD and he rips them or something like that. I mean, I'm not talking about anything that most people don't already do, but I wanted to show my system here real fast. First off, let me plug it in. So it's basically this clear click right here, okay? And I am going to go ahead and I am going to plug in and unfortunately it only takes a USB stick. It does not take like a hard drive, with a USB, and that kind of bums me out a little bit. So now that we have all of that in there, I have now taken from the PAL VCR and put it in here. We're gonna turn on the PAL VCR again. And you can see we got the signal in. Grab this random tape here. And you can see the tapes, they're old. They drop out quite a bit. And I'm not recording it to the USB drive because I already have it. But this is what I use. This is what I use for putting everything to digital. And so like the stuff that we're seeing, and what I hate about this VCR is that the play is up there way too long. It really bothers me. But what you can see is that it records to it. It records both PAL and NTSC, and it is really pretty cool. Is it the best conversion? Is the best way of grabbing digital? It works for what I'm doing. You all might have something that's far more, really huge files and stuff. This works for what I'm doing and for archiving VHS. And I am super, super excited to be able to share all of this with you. I hope you all enjoyed seeing at least how I did it back in the day, converting PAL tapes to NTSC, what it was like. I don't regret any of that. I don't regret the cost, and even though that I only really was using the equipment for maybe 5 years at the most, it was so much fun, and I don't think I could really explain that feeling of going to like Black Star, which sold all the videos, and it was like the first way for me and others in other countries to get a hold of some of these PAL videos that didn't have any sort of luck getting released over here. And like I said earlier, like Quatermass, I remember getting that and just being like, can't believe, Quatermass in the Pit, I can't believe I'm able to have this. It was very fun. It was very cool. And I love that period of time, and just the idea of taking something in PAL and converting it to NTSC and sharing it with friends, or just having it for myself or whatever. It's a lot of fun. It was really cool. Now, as one of the things that I do, also is we talk about radio times. Is there something unique in the radio times? That's to do with the story we're talking about. And with Pyramids of Mars, it's pretty straightforward. It's the episodes being talked about, being listed, and then obviously also the listings for the repeat. What's really interesting about this, though, is that the DVDs, which is where I first really had the exposure to the Radio Times listings, because the people putting these together were putting the Radio Times listings, which was a revelation for me. The thing about that is Pyramids of Mars is still pretty early on, all things considered, in the DVD range. And so it doesn't have the Radio Times listings to this, which is really interesting because that is very much, for me, a big part of the DVD range now. And, it was, for me, like I said, a revelation to have all of, the clippings and listings for the Radio Times in really nice quality. But what this did for me, and you might be seeing a behavioral pattern forming here. Suddenly, once this was available, once the listings were available, I didn't want it just for Doctor Who. I wanted it for everything that I own, British television-wise. I wanted to see TV listings for everything, which prompted me to get every issue of the Radio Times. It prompted me to get as many issues of the TV Times as I could and have them. And my thought behind that was simply this, at least originally, was when I did my blog from thearchive.co.uk and I would randomly pull stuff to write about, I wanted to include the listings, just as the Doctor Who DVDs included the listings for the stories. I just thought it really added a whole lot. And what I really like about the Radio Times or TV Times listings is that when I watch this, or any of the shows, it's me pulling it off a shelf and just watching it and enjoying it. That's great. The Radio Times listings, for me, really ties it to the air date, really ties it to the whole purpose that this was made, to the air date, for the people to watch it. It's almost like me looking at a Radio Times listings is looking at something like going back in time and looking at an amazing piece of history. It is so tied to the air date. This is tied to the experience of people watching the show at the time. That's why I love it. If you ever have a chance to go through old issues of the Radio Times, do so, because it is such a throwback to, the BBC mentality at the time, the way that they designed stuff. It's incredible. And so I wanted that for everything that I had in my collection. And so it became, big shock here, an obsession, kind of something that I am fairly well known for. And so I always connect those two, and I love it. And even also looking at like missing episodes through the Radio Times. We know that they aired. We know that they were made. But that air date is what really kind of ties it together. And in some ways, those audio recordings also do that, because we know, for the most part, that the audio recordings that we are listening to are from the original air date in the UK. There are exceptions, we know that. But, one shot, basically, apart from the evil of the Daleks, one shot to record it, and that's what happens. And then someone does so. That's a whole other discussion. But that's why the Radio Times are so important to me. And so if I don't really write for the blog anymore, but if you are on my Twitter, at From the Archive, every Wednesday and Thursday at least, I post Radio Times Wednesday and TV Times Thursday, which is something of interest that I randomly pick an issue of Radio Times or TV Times, hopefully find something good, and then post it. or if I'm currently watching a show, making my way through a show. If there is any articles or any promotional stuff about that show, I'll be posting it during that time as well. It's, those listings mean a lot to me, and I know I'm not the only one, because I see you all out there. I see many of you out there who collect it, use it as reference, kind of look back at it as the bygone era, and you're the ones who actually had lived through it. I am someone who is just living through it just from being on the sideline with it. What's also interesting about this Pyramids of Mars DVD, while I have in my hand, and a few of the DVDs at the time we're doing this, was that it's, you see, where it says Doctor Who Pyramids of Mars, maybe a lot of you don't notice or care, but what is there all the same is that it's the wrong font for Pyramids of Mars. It doesn't match the font on the cover. What's also interesting about it too is this is before we started getting full color labels on the disc or disc image. Isn't that fascinating? Now, also, when I put these together, one of the things I always put on my outline that I read for people, is there anything missing? Is there something that was wiped? So the last video I did was the Ice Warriors. Obviously, first of all, all the episodes were wiped. The episodes 2 and 3 are missing. So what could possibly be for Pyramids of Mars? Maybe not Pyramids of Mars per se, but we're talking about those Howard DaSilva episodes. And everything that is made for television has a master somewhere, right? That's what it all comes from, is a master. So these edits that were made from a BBC master in, I think it was New Jersey, where the Howard DaSilva stuff is edited together. TJ will correct me if I'm horribly wrong. They were masters made of those edits, and then duplications made to send out to the stations, meaning that the Howard DaSilva versions, a master was created and then dubs sent out. So those original Howard DaSilva masters are gone, long gone. They were probably not even wiped. They were probably just thrown out. I think TJ tried to purchase them, try to buy them, and I think he was just too late to do so. Sometime we'll have to do a video with TJ just so he can explain everything. So you have that. So that's missing. And some of you might be like, oh well. It's important. Like I said earlier on, this is an important part of the U.S. Doctor Who viewing experience. And it shouldn't just be forgotten or ignored. So TJ has been taken many years, as I said, to track down broadcast masters of episodes, recreate them. He's been recreating them with the remastered versions. He still works in the industry where stations are running Doctor Who, mainly the cable stations, supplying masters, and those are from the remastered DVD masters. But then he'll take those DVD masters and also create a Howard DaSilva version so that they're in the best quality. This is coming from somebody who, he's really passionate about that portion of it. And some of you might be like, well, geez, that's a little bit overkill. Come on, guys. You're watching a video about videotape. Don't tell me about passion, right? I mean, never look down on somebody for what they think is fun and cool, because we all have our thing. And TJ's in a position to actually try to recreate this stuff the best possible. Like I mentioned, he was using, and I don't think he's doing it anymore, but back in the day he was using a Grass Valley switcher, which is a piece of broadcast equipment, that to duplicate the wipes that they used during the Howard DaSilva segments. He would be tracking down the best possible material to create these new edits. He even ended up getting a broadcast tape from me to use for his recreation and restoration of the Howard DaSilva episodes. But that's for another time to talk about. Let's move on over to DWM. DWM 95 in the letter section, there's a complaint, and rightly so, of how edited the Brain of Morbius is. So this is before Pyramids of Mars comes out the first time, and basically, and once we get to Brain of Morbius, and I know it's documented everywhere anyway, I just don't remember if Brain of Morbius was more of a matter that someone went and they used the wrong master for duplicating and ended up using the 60-minute versus the actual, like, going ahead and creating a 4-part version. Whatever, it was the version that was used for the repeat version was put on video. So at this point, you start to see people starting to be like, hey, basically this is great that you're taking these stories and putting them out on videotape. But first of all, it's super expensive. And secondly, it's not even like, we're not even talking about the edits of removing the episode credits between parts 1 and 4. We're taking out half the story. So that's an issue, obviously, right? That's a problem. And you go on to DWM 97, and the letter section, the trend continues. And this is where it's good. Whether the BBC at the time was already have different plans in the works or whatever else, it was very important that they start to realize that that people are giving feedback that what you're doing is not the best way to go about it. Moving on over to DWM 99, it is the tiniest of blurbs that is about Pyramids of Mars is now available on VHS. It's not even about, and I couldn't find it. Maybe it's out there. Maybe it's in clear sight. I could not find anything in the issues of DWM that said Pyramids of Mars is going to be coming out on VHS. Hooray. It was more just this little thing like, oh, by the way, Pyramids of Mars is out on VHS. I don't know. Maybe I'm misunderstanding things. The idea that old Doctor Who stories, at that point, PBS was rerunning a lot of these things continuously. Over in the UK, there was no UK Gold yet. So, we talked about the last big Doctor Who repeat season, which was the 5 Faces of Doctor Who. You had Doctor Who and the Monsters also. But this hadn't been seen in a long time. It's Pyramids of Mars. It's a huge story, and nothing is being said about it. I don't know. To me, that's news. But here we go. And then in DWM 100, we have Gary Russell, and he writes about Pyramids of Mars on VHS and ponders if the BBC could release 6-parters such as The Sea Devils or Frontier in Space, and also wonders if fans would pay more for 6-parters. And that's so interesting to me because it really goes to show we're at the infancy of this range, where now, even though nothing is guaranteed, we're pretty sure that we're going to get all the collections. It was pretty much said very early on in the DVD life for Doctor Who that someone, part of BBC marketing or something, came along and said, we're going to release all Doctor Who on DVD. Eventually, it was also like, we're releasing all Doctor Who on VHS. So, but this is very early on. And I suppose the idea of Sea Devils, Frontier in Space, both of these on VHS, I could be down for that. And once again, I think Gary is going off of the fact that the price for this is so high still for these stories. And so the idea is that if you end up sticking 6 episodes onto a tape or 2 tapes, how much is someone willing to pay for that? Well, we didn't have much longer to figure it out. If I'm not mistaken, the Seeds of Death may not be the very next VHS release, but I think it was at least the one after that. And that's the 6-parter that was edited down to 1 tape, remove all the stuff. And, that was the first black and white story to be released. So Gary didn't have too terribly long to wait and find out. I think the question really should have been, when are we going to get these without without so much edits done on them? But, it's still very interesting all the same. We go on over to DWB, and you're like, well, wait, we still have more to talk about with the VHS of Pyramids of Mars. We do. But let's go over to DWB. First of all, DWB number 19, and in that it is kind of like if you thought that the announcement of Pyramids of Mars on VHS for DWM was small, this has to be the record. This is even smaller. What am I missing here? I mean, I remember, and luckily that's a trend that doesn't last, because the fact of the matter is that soon enough it becomes a much bigger deal, and we see it. We've done videos that show it about the VHS range and getting releases of the artwork and stuff like this. But back then, I don't know, maybe they just didn't know what to do with it. Maybe they just thought it's so different, or we don't think it's going to last, or whatever else. They didn't do a whole lot with that. I don't know. Surprises me. Now, DWB number 20 has a little bit more in it, and what it says is that the blurb talks about Pyramids of Mars should be available at the time of publication, and also talks about upcoming possible releases such as The Seeds of Death or Day of the Daleks. The next release, and I answer my own question, I actually answered my own question from earlier, because I don't remember where I put stuff in my outline. The next release after this was, in fact, Seeds of Death, and then followed by Day of the Daleks. So, Gary Lee, or Levy, at that time, he must have known somebody on the inside where he's kind of doing that, possibly, because you could say possibly about, at this point, literally 150 titles, but in fact you get the absolute next two right. Yeah, you knew what was going on, buddy, and that's fine. And that was what made DWB so awesome, is that DWM is always amazing, and it has lasted through time itself, and it's very good at letting us know what's happening in the realm of Doctor Who. DWB was a bit of like the National Enquirer, kind of a bit gossipy, a little bit, I don't want to say trashy, but, just a little bit more rough around the edges. And what you'd get would be just like, hey, we heard from some guy at a pub that, the war machines exist in Nigeria. That sort of thing. And that's the sort of thing I love. And if it wasn't always right, it didn't matter, because actually, most of the time, DWB was right. And so with them saying, I don't know, it might be the Seeds of Death and the Day of the Daleks coming up next. And next thing you know, that's exactly what it is. Good on you. No, that's really cool. We talk about DWM DWB, and that was for the original release of Pyramids of Mars. Now, in 1994, of course, something spectacular happens. And that is very simply this, that a lot of those movie versions that were released originally on VHS 10 years previous, can you believe that? 10 years previous at that point already, get a uncut version finally put out. Now, not all of them. A good number of them do. But there are some that I remember thinking at the time, like, what do you mean Revenge of the Cybermen isn't yet released uncut? Same with, like, Seeds of Death. At the time, I think right around the time Brain and Morbius, all of these different stories were kind of like, well, what about them? But at the same time, you finally get Pyramids of Mars uncut. You get Spirit from Space uncut, Ark in Space, Day of the Daleks. These are fantastic stories. You can't have them all out at once. So it was great. And so now we go back to DWM in 1994. What DWM is talking about in issue 207 is, for 1994, Pyramids of Mars is listed as part of the release schedule as unedited, which it is. And also important because of the VHS price slash, which made the stories more affordable. So right then and there, suddenly the stories themselves were becoming less expensive to buy. There was a price slash, which also meant that sales must have been doing pretty well to be able to do that. Same time, DWB was also talking about the price slashes as well. That was a big deal, and we'll show how big of a deal it is in a second. So there are two releases to Pyramids of Mars, right? And it's interesting. Obviously the thing here is that this is movie version. We talk about whether I'm right or not. We talk about changes in branding over time. And the earliest of Doctor Who releases, minus the neon logo era of two releases, we talk about the fact that there's no square around the title and the logo, which come into play with the 1990 releases. And so you have this fantastic release. And I think that a lot of these early releases, yep, certainly is, a lot of these early release covers were done by Sid Sutton. Sid Sutton, of course, is the gentleman who designed the neon logo, the one who designed the title sequences for season 18 through what was used in season 23. So it's interesting that, kind of how everyone works on something, because you'd think that a VHS release cover may not be a priority for Sid Sutton, but here it is, and I love this cover. To me, this is absolutely wonderful. Just very simple cover. It makes me wonder, now that I see this, and knowing that Sid Sutton did all these, Sid Sutton did Revenge of the Cybermen, the original Revenge of the Cybermen cover, where he used a number of the elements from his title sequence, including the neon logo. The question I've always wondered, and if anyone knows, I'd be very interested to know. Unfortunately, I can't ask Sid Sutton any longer. Whose decision ultimately was it to move from the neon logo to the diamond logo? And trust me, I'm not trying to start another diamond logo discussion or bash again. I genuinely is interested because it's like, okay, if he worked on those early releases, did he decide, I'm going to use my elements? And was it somebody else who was like, you know what, we think that the diamond logo looks better than the neon logo? Or was it him that just like, actually, I think this is what works better? Because what's interesting is, for the most part, the lettering up until 1997 remains the same. The font, in some form. It's not too far. It might get more condensed. It might get a little elongated, but it's generally the same font. So I find that very interesting. When I look at this VHS, it just reminds me of the early days of VHS, because it is. I mean, I get that. But there's something so wonderful about it. Now, on the inside, you get nothing. Now, there is... Oh, here's some interesting stuff here. Somebody wrote something here. I don't know. I don't know what that is. But I'll tell you what's in here is a receipt for the video. That from W.H. Smith, but it doesn't... I don't see a date on it. Nope, it's from... Looks like from maybe April 11th. Isn't this riveting? This is from April 11th, 1990, or something like that. And it's really interesting, isn't it? $9.99. So the price slash has already taken place, even though it's not the unedited version. And then you have the tape itself. That's the old label for the VHS label. And yes, I did not rewind it. You want to know why? I barely got this through, and one of my VCRs died. So and the picture quality, and now I've tramped this about 3 times. the picture quality is just not there anymore. It's like this VHS is on its last legs. So, you know, once again, this is just such a nostalgic cover for VHS. You know, this is what also was released in the U.S., was this version, and this was released under the Playhouse banner. Now, we get into now what I would consider for my VHS collection, the main version. There is something, after having owned the edited version, there's something about seeing the complete, unedited little banner at the bottom there, which meant a great deal. You know, it's just like, oh, I can't believe this. I have it unedited. Is that weird? I mean, honestly, it was like out-of-body experience to get this and Spearhead and Day of the Daleks, Death to the Daleks, unedited, still with the same covers. I am so glad that they kept this cover because I love it so much, and I would even say it's even better now with the rectangle at the top of it. What I really love about this is the way that they're even able to kind of make that sarcophagus really kind of pop out even more. I just love this cover. I love it even more this way. Now the back cover, you know, these are the same, really, for the most part. Just different sort of, and it doesn't need to be any different. But it's, you know, just a couple minor tweaks. This one, just how they format it is a little bit different, but other than that, they're the same. And you know, it's funny, they don't change the amount of time, like the duration. The duration would have changed between the movie version and the episodic, but whatever, that's fine. And then, of course, you end up with the label that is, you know, very much with the label that we have come to know as part of the BBC video label, and especially with that embossed writing on the label. I've always thought that was really classy, really cool. I'll tell you, I was looking at a printer in the 90s that would print in like that silver emboss, so I could put it on my labels. At the time, it seemed like a very smart idea. Now, thank God I never did it. And even now, even I am kind of wondering, what the hell is wrong with me? That I was even going to go that far to print labels that look just like the BBC labels, because I wanted to have that embossed silver shiny logo or lettering or whatever. What else do we got here? We have here just talking about all these series. And, you know, once again, all this stuff, at the time, I didn't know what the hell Only Fools and Horses was. I didn't, you know, I saw All Creatures Great and Small, you know, all these things, but it's like, this isn't quite as dynamic for me as the ones that later that we've talked about, where it's like all the sci-fi favorites that are like, ooh, I really want to try. Because, like, Absolutely Fabulous was being aired here. Comedy Central was running AbFab every Saturday, if not more than that. But I remember every Saturday for like a 2-hour block, which with all the commercials is probably one episode. But it was really, like, I couldn't go out Saturday nights, and I went out every Saturday night, but I couldn't go out until I watched all the episodes of AbFab that they were running that day, because I loved the series so much. And I was recording on my end, and I also have the Laserdisc collection as well. Of course I do. And incidentally, I think AbFab was also one that was released in the U.S. before it was released in the U.K. Funny enough. No, this is really, you know, these are great memories of these stories and these videos. And even the spines are a little bit different, as you can see. And just the logos and everything else. So, yeah. What about the U.S.? What about my friends, the U.S., also known as me? So we talked about Playhouse Video releasing Pyramids of Mars in movie version, just like they released all the original sets. That was all that was available. Eventually, CBS Fox took over from Playhouse, and eventually Warner Brothers took it over from CBS Fox, all from the BBC, but these are the distributors. So, as we are talking about Pyramids of Mars here, the VHS release, sometimes, especially back in the day, and I don't know if these ads really exist anymore in other publications, because I don't even know if they're really publications anymore apart from DWM, that would carry this. And since I don't really get DWM anymore, I don't know if there's like ads about the collection sets or anything, because they're covered pretty heavily. But in DWM 209, BBC Video puts out an ad, and it is Price Destruction. With the lowering of prices, and Pyramids of Mars is one of the prominent covers. It's a pretty cool ad, and it's also really cool because it is very much from, that time. And we're talking about the excitement of cutting the prices on these videos. And, I suppose they wanted to make sure that happened as well, because who's going to rebuy these videos only because they now have opening and closing credits to them? I would. Of course I would. But maybe not everyone would. If you maybe make it for less money, basically by half, if I'm not mistaken, you get more people who would want to do that. So it's a really nice, a nice ad that they put in there. Very nostalgic. I remember that very much. But as far as like the video releases, for at least one of the unedited runs of Doctor Who that came out, one of them has a cut to it, and there might be others. I'm not remembering off the top of my head. Pyramids of Mars doesn't. Apart from the original that had the opening, closing credits taken out of, all the episodes, apart from 1 and 4, it's intact. There isn't anything else taken out of it. And there isn't anything taken out of this video either. It is truly unedited, uncut. Like I'm trying to get out, not all the ones that were released at this time are able to truly say that. The other thing I want to kind of talk about here is the NTSC release of Pyramids of Mars. That was released originally by Playhouse Video at a time that literally that was all that was available to them. They released all of those early Doctor Who stories in omnibus form, and that was it. As time went on, they did not release all of the unedited versions. Anything that was re-released in the UK that did not change the cover seemed to have not been released. And I don't know if that's because BBC in the UK were letting the US folks know, hey, we're re-releasing these, and they're seeing that it's basically the same cover, so they're just thought that there really wasn't a change apart from a new cover, and they opted not to do it, or there was something else. Because Revenge of the Cybermen, Terror of the Zygons, Brain of Morbius, they all got a re-release. And for some reason, the other ones didn't. And I'm thinking maybe that might have something to do with it. I don't know. But there was a moment of hope for U.S. fans. And that was in 1998. So, like we talked about before, these VHS releases were done by Playhouse, the early ones. CBS Fox started to distribute it, and then eventually Warner Brothers. All still ran by the BBC. And so, when in 1998, for whatever reason, I'm not 100% sure why, they decided to do a set of videos called the Gateway Collection. And the Gateway Collection, from what I can tell, was literally like, here is some of the best Doctor Who stories that we believe is available. And the covers would have a banner that says Gateway Collection, And amongst these released in 1998 were Talons of Wang Chang, City of Death, Stones of Blood, which is part of Key to Time, so I'm not sure why it got its own release. To me that's kind of weird, but it's not impossible. I mean, they're connected, but you can get by without it. And then Pyramids of Mars. And so right away, I think a lot of us were thinking Pyramids of Mars and Talon Wang Chang is getting a re-release, part of this Gateway collection. Maybe this is where we're going to get episodic. Now, the weird thing about that is that in the UK, Pyramids of Mars got an episodic re-release. Talons of Wang Chang never got an episodic release until the DVD came out. So we were perplexed over in the US, like, well, maybe we're getting, episodic, and we're going to actually get ahead of the game and get an episodic Talons of Wang Chang as well. Unfortunately, that was not going to be the case. What we end up here with is simply that it is the same movie version as always. And I think that's a real shame. I mean, obviously with Talons of Wang Chang, there was nothing you could do about it. BBC did not release it over there, but it was not released over here episodically for Pyramids of Mars. That makes me think that there was confusion back in the day about maybe thinking that those releases having the same cover was confusing to the folks putting it out over here, thinking, well, it's just a revised cover. Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But the Gateway collection, I don't know. I don't know if it did well or not. It's a kind of a strange thing for me, and it took away the diamond logo, put on the Warner Brothers release version of the crappy Blue Mirror logo, which I am not a fan of at all. But if it got some fans from the TV movie to kind of check out some stuff, which I'm not so sure it would have, but who knows, then there's nothing wrong with that, I guess, is there? Especially now, as we are many years after, and we have the entire run of Doctor Who in episodic available. And we're not even talking just physical media. It's everywhere. You don't have to look far to be able to watch Doctor Who. It's time to do a video comparison. Why don't we do this? Because I'm trying to figure out what we should do here. I want to do a video comparison between the KTCA version of Pyramids of Mars that I recorded off in 1990. It was an SP. My movie versions are an LP, so SP is going to be better quality. And then let's go with the original VHS release. We're going to do it from the original video release from 1985, the re-release in 1994, and then the DVD. And let's take a look to see how far we've come in quality.
It's materialized at the correct point in space. Obviously not in time. Temporal reverse. Some vast impulse of energy has drawn the TARDIS off course.
You're saying this is Unit HQ, but years before I knew it?
Yes.
It's so different. It can't be the same house.
Must be the old Priory. The unit house was built on the site.
The old Priory was burnt down, wasn't it?
Something's very wrong.
Doctor, I don't like it.
Something's going on contrary to the laws of the universe.
I bet you never thought we could talk so much about Pyramids of Mars, did you? Well, here we are. If anyone could talk about a story for an epic length of time, it will be me. But I love doing it. I hope that you all love listening to it, or take a couple chapters, and listen to what I have to say. It's a lot of fun to do so. I also want to take a moment to thank my Patreon subscribers. Honestly, I am so blessed to have these folks support the work I do. Here they are. And if you would like to sign up and join Patreon for me, I would greatly appreciate it. My goal is always 1 or 2 after each video is released, and we have 3 that we're going to be doing this summer, hopefully. So any sort of support goes towards new equipment, like new lights like behind me, getting some of the old format stuff. Please consider helping if you enjoy this. Once again, as always, the folks who don't support, but they are enthusiastic and that they're putting in comments and stuff, I appreciate that very much as well. Thank you very much for that as well. Once again, if I got something wrong or mistake, or you want to share your experiences with me, please go ahead and send me feedback. I absolutely love it. It is one of my favorite things is to read what was their situation at a time that the videos come out. It truly is. It makes me smile, and I love it. So thank you for sharing your memories with me. That's Pyramids of Mars. It is truly one of the greats of Doctor Who, and the more I think about it, the more nostalgic I am for it. And, you know, that's saying a lot, because as you could see, I am very nostalgic for this entire collection. And I love being able to talk about these videos, and I'm glad that you take the time and listen to what I have to say and share your thoughts too.
And there are more space adventures on these BBC videos.